This is Freshwaves. We've got Judy Rentenaar in the station this morning, and me, Bren Masson, your host for the day. We're talking about expressive arts. We just started talking about writing in terms of journaling and doing a gratitude list. Now we're going to morph into poetry. One of the things that I found really lovely about expressive arts was being reintroduced to poetry and prose. I've always been one to write poetry and prose, and I'm actually a big Dr. Seuss fan. Nobody likes Dr. Seuss better than me, and I can make up Dr. Seuss poems all the time. And as Julie, the coordinator, said, you don't have to make it rhyme. Sometimes I like to make it rhyme. And poetry is that way, isn't it?
Yes.
It's very freeing. And there are lots of studies done. Julie herself saying that she went into a hospital setting where a friend of hers was in the hospital, and how by her reading the poetry to her friend, it affected the whole ward with everybody around, and all of their levels were so less stressed on the monitors after reading poetry.
And her handing out the poetry in the emergency room, waiting room. She would hand out poetry to people.
Because the people in the waiting room are often really stressed as well. And I noticed that you've brought into the studio one of our little pieces of... We had a poetry box, and they were beautiful poems wrapped in really colorful paper, and you opened it like a present. And when you open it, there's a poem inside. And which one is this? You're going to tell us which poem that you brought.
It's Rilke's Sonnets to Orpheus, Part 2, Sonnet 13.
And what does it say?
It says, be ahead of all parting, as if it had already happened, like winter, which even now is passing. For beneath the winter is a winter so endless that to survive it all is a triumph of the heart. Be forever dead in your DC, and climb back singing. Climb praying as you return to connection. Here among the disappearing, in the realm of the transient, be a ringing glass that shatters as it rings. Be. And, at the same time, know what is not to be. The non-being inside you allows you to vibrate in full resonance with your world. Use it for once. To all that has run its course, and to the vast unsayable, numbers of beings abounding in nature, add yourself gladly and cancel the cost.
Wow. Now, you just picked that out of a bin of hundreds of poems, and you can't see them when you pick them out.
Right.
And that just... Obviously, it's something that you liked because you've got it 2 years later.
I still have it, yes.
That's really neat. And I think poetry has that ability, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It kind of gives you if you find something that really resonates with you, it kind of sticks with you.
I think we found when we pulled a poem out of the box and opened it later by ourselves that often the poem would resonate with us for whatever happened during the day and what processing we were doing. It was really interesting, the connection.
Mm-hmm. And if it's not the ooky spooky of we pulled that out on purpose because we needed it, it was also that you saw things in the poem that you wouldn't have recognized otherwise because we were doing the work that we were doing.
Correct. Yes.
So it's kind of like a circle of things, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, do you use poetry? Have you used it since? Is it something that you've gone back to, or?
I liked a lot of the ones that Julie, our coordinator, picked. A lot of the authors, a lot of the poets, authors. But I myself don't write poetry at all. So it was more a fuller appreciation of the poetry she was picking.
Okay, as opposed to... So you just like the reading of poetry?
Correct. I couldn't do it myself.
It's sort of thinking like we're finding hidden treasures.
Right. I found it daunting for me to write the poetry.
It was a good exercise, though. I found that, once again, it was that poesis. The process of writing the poems really got me thinking about things. And thinking about things that I normally wouldn't have thought about. So kind of appreciating the environment around me. So when a person is... When you get too caught up, I think, in life's... what you should be doing those kinds of things. It's really nice to have the poetry to kind of come back to in a way that allows you to appreciate the things that are around you that you might be taking for granted.
Right.
Because you can write a poem about a tree.
Yes.
Or a flower. Or about spring.
Yes.
And then that brings that to life for you and brings out things that might not otherwise get out. It might not otherwise be expressed. And I don't know, I really found a new appreciation for poetry through expressive arts. And also through knowing that there wasn't any judgment. I think that's a big key in the expressive arts, is allowing yourself to express yourself without judgment.
Right.
Did that resonate with you?
It did. And I think what I found was many of us found certain arts that it would resonate with them and others that didn't. And we all had to sort of embrace our fear and walk through it and learn to enjoy it and see a different aspect of ourselves and of the art.
Of the art of poetry or the... Yeah.
Or the art of drama, or the art of music, the art of movement. There were some people that simply did not want to move at all. Dance scared them.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was a continuum. And when you put the continuum on the wall of things that are safe versus things that are scary, it seems that the less fluid something is, the safer it feels. And the more fluid it gets, I don't want to say liquid, but the more fluid it gets, the scarier it is.
Right.
Except with sand.
Yes.
Because sand, the dry sand, which is less fluid, is actually more fluid. Dry sand doesn't hold its place, and wet sand does. Kind of interesting. Yet in art, in the what do you call it? In the graphic art side of expressive arts, watercolor is less safe than acrylic, which is less safe than chalk, which is less safe than crayon, which is less safe than pencil or something. You know, the way it goes on the continuum. It's very interesting how that all works. So if you were starting out on a journey of expressive arts, you'd be more likely to maybe do a drawing with something simple and not very fluid.
Yes.
Which would therefore give it a bit more control. I think that's why people like the adult coloring. What do you think of adult coloring? I'll hold my tongue for a second.
I think it's skimming the surface of expressive arts. It's at least an outlet for adults, and it's starting them in the process of exploring.
Yes, I would say the same thing. I find that it's really just scraping the very, very, very top layer, if it scrapes anything at all. It's kind of mindless and allows you to focus on one thing instead of a busy brain. But the next step to that adult coloring is to make your own design and then color in your own design.
Right. And some may find that very, very scary.
Because if you worry about the end product, it is very scary. Adult coloring actually gives you the end product, and you fill in the spots along the way.
Yes.
And it's interesting. And it's funny because it would be like reading the back of the book first and then filling in all the bits that got you to the back of the book.
Great analogy, Brenda.
Thank you. It's like having the math problem in front of you, the solution in front of you, without getting to that solution. And expressive arts is really focusing on the poiesis, isn't it? It's focusing on the process of getting to the end.
Right. Even though, if you remember, many of us like to go around situations during the 8-week period and then realized we couldn't get away with that. We had to go through rather than around.
It's a good life learning lesson too, because I think a lot of us do that in life. You know, that the old adage about the easier path often ends up being the more difficult path. And we are in a place many times in our lives where, as long as we're following what we're supposed to do, life seems to work out. Then people get to be just over 40 and realize that they haven't done anything that they've ever wanted to do. But that's okay because I'm supposed to do this, and as far as society is concerned, I'm okay. But they're not okay.
Right.
And they need to express themselves. And expressive arts is just that.
Yes.
It's just that. There's a great poem called Letting Go. And it says, slowly she celebrated the sacrament of letting go. First she surrendered her green, then the orange, yellow, and red. Finally she let go of her brown, shedding her last leaf. She stood empty and silent, stripped bare. Leaning against the winter sky, she began her vigil of trust. Isn't that nice?
Very nice.
Very nice. That's one of my favorite poems. And I think while we were there, I was thinking I could do this in a video. I could make this into a video. And the brain starts going, and before you know it, there's poesis all over the place. Piles and piles and piles of poesis, because you can make all kinds of things as long as you're allowed to express yourself.
Let yourself go.
Let yourself go.
Mm-hmm.
Letting go. A tree lets go of all of its leaves, all the beautiful colors, and it does stand naked for a while. But then, wow, in the spring, look what happens. It's so beautiful all over again.
Yep.
Metaphors. I love them. I love them. That was part of the writing and part of getting through that spot. We're going to talk a little bit about forests when we get back from our next break. You're listening to Fresh Waves here on Whistle FM. Our guest is Judy Rentenaar. We have 2 expressive arts practitioners in the studio this morning. I'm your host, Brenda Masson. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
When I came to Al-Anon, I wanted to straighten out my son's life. His drinking was tearing our family apart. I felt very frustrated. I knew I had to get help. In Al-Anon family groups, I learned that before I could help my son, I had to help myself first.
For an Al-Anon family group meeting near you, call 1-888-4-AL-ANON, 1-888-425-2666. A message from Al-Anon family groups.
Hey, I'm whistling. Would you like to whistle too? Whistle FM is looking for a few good volunteers. Come and join our team and learn a new skill. We're looking for producers, show hosts, and even people to help out around the station. Learn something new and meet new people. Email us at admin@whistleradio.com or drop by the station behind Stillville Fine Furniture. We hope to see you soon.
Here we are in the studios of Whistle FM in the heart of downtown Stouffville talking about expressive arts. We have Judy Rentenaar in the studio this morning, and I'm your host, Brenda Masson, and we're talking about expressive arts. We were just talking about poetry and, I guess, appreciating the things around us through poetry. Poetry has one of those amazing abilities to make you feel differently about something, to see the beauty in something that you might not have seen previous. And one of the things I really liked about being in Haliburton was the forest aspect.
Steps from our classroom, it was amazing.
And looking out the window into the forest. And they made a big, I guess, an architectural. One is digging bones and the other's making a building. The one where you make a building?
Yeah.
Architectural decision to blend into the scenery of the forest and of the area. There's a lot of rock incorporated, and there's a lot of rock in Haliburton. There's a lot of beams, beautiful wooden beams, and floor-to-ceiling windows.
Yes.
In every classroom overlooking the forest and the sculpture forest, which is also gorgeous.
It was amazing. On our breaks, we could walk through the forest and just enjoy a wonderful, peaceful walk before going back to class.
Yep, and we could use elements from the forest in our art, in our poesis. So in the process of getting to what we were creating, we could spend time in the forest looking for things that normally you wouldn't be looking for in the forest. A little stone, a piece of bark, trying not to just deface the forest by taking anything that was alive and still growing. You know, it's not like we were taking truckloads of mulch or something, but a little piece of bark and a little piece of this or that, and using it in the art that we were creating. It was really fun.
It was amazing.
And you know, it's kind of, I keep referring back to fun. Children have the ability to play and have fun. And their noses are close to the ground. And they see things that the grown-ups are just walking past. If you ever walk down the road with a 3-year-old, and you're literally dragging them along the road because every step they take, there's something new to look at. There's a bug, there's a stone, there's a piece of crayon that someone dropped, you know?
A puddle.
A puddle. And I love that. There's a puddle scene on Facebook now where the kid walks in the puddle and turns around, goes back and walks through it again. They do that about 5 times, and thank goodness for whoever the caregiver was that was taking the video, that they appreciated the fact that this kid just had the freedom to play in the puddle and explore and splash, and the water bounces up. And it's wonderful.
Fun, yes.
And it takes us back to being that child and playing.
And that's what we were allowed to do during that 8-week course.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we as practitioners allow people to do within the safety of a group, within the safety of a one-on-one, is to allow themselves the freedom to play as a 50-year-old.
Yes.
Because we all need to play. And you know, you do sports. People say to me, oh, people play because they go out and they go downhill skiing. They worry about their hair. They worry about how their helmet looks. They worry about the fact that the helmet doesn't match their new ski jacket, or that they didn't get that nice hat with the real coyote fur on top. They got the fake one, and they better put it back in their bag, and how their makeup looks, and if it'll wash off in the snow. All the different things that grown-ups seem to worry about. And the little kid who's having the most fun on the hill couldn't care less that their poles don't match their skis, if they even have poles. They've got the craziest helmet thing on with a fake mohawk hairstyle and all this kind of stuff going on. And they're having a blast. And they don't care.
Yes.
And for us as grown-ups, to get to that point, to get to the point where we have the freedom to just be and not care about all of those facades, is how expressive arts can get you there.
Yes, and if you remember, our class was many different ages, consisted of many people with many coming from different backgrounds and different ages, so that was fun as well. Even the 20-year-olds had forgotten how to play.
Yeah, and they weren't that far away from it. They think they are.
Yes.
But they don't look at it from a 50-year-old's perspective and say, we're quite far away from it, but you guys are right there. You just came through that. Go back.
Yeah.
What happens to us, do you think, in this process from becoming children to what we think are adults, where we lose our sense of play?
I'm not sure. There's that sense of responsibility, I guess, the sense of control. They need to, mature quickly.
Maybe that's why the pubs are so full. It's because that's kind of adult play, and that's what people like to do.
And they have the permission to do that.
Yeah, but only in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, if you walked into the pub with some crazy costume on and started dancing however you felt like dancing, you may not be looked upon as a person who is of sound mind and body.
Wow.
But it's okay to play, isn't it?
It is.
Now, one of the things that I liked about the forest as well is we did an exercise where we made a prayer tree, and we sent our thoughts, intentions, and prayers to Fort McMurray.
Yes.
And Fort McMurray at the time was on fire. And we took fabric strips, and for you, Miss Textile, that's good.
It was fun.
It is. So we took fabric strips that were made of cotton, for the most part, and maybe 3 feet long?
Probably, by the time it wrapped around the branch.
Mm-hmm. And we wrote in a Sharpie marker or something that would write on cloth.
Yes.
An intention.
Mm-hmm.
A wish, a prayer. And then we tied the strips of fabric around the tree. We were not gouging the tree or anything, just very lightly on the branches. And then the wind would take the intentions to wherever they needed to go.
Yes.
And for weeks we watched these fabric strips blowing in the wind. And symbolically it was wonderful.
It was. It really felt like we were actively helping those who were experiencing the fire in Fort McMurray.
And it's actually one of those visual reminders that every time you looked out the window, you gave a thought to those people that you had sent the intention to.
Right.
Symbolically, it would be a wonderful thing to do at your own home, if you have a garden and a little bush or a tree, and you have kids, and even if you don't have kids, write your intentions on a biodegradable piece of cloth that's not going to harm the environment.
Yes.
And tie it loosely around the branches of the tree so that you can see it blowing in the winds, and that intention to be taken around to wherever it's needed. Mm-hmm. Whether it's Humboldt or... I always thought that through the whole Humboldt thing, I was hoping that a prayer tree like that would spring up. The weather here was miserable at the time, so it didn't make people feel like wanting to be outside.
Right.
But that would have been a nice thing for Humboldt. I might do that in Haliburton when I go up to the cottage this year, is do a tree for Humboldt.
That sounds like a great idea. Maybe I should join you.
Yes,
okay.
We'll go together.
Okay.
And whoever else comes into Haliburton, if you see our tree, you can add to it the Humboldt tree.
Yes.
Yeah, why not?
Yep. Sounds like an awesome idea.
Mm-hmm. And there's a whole bunch of little tricks like that we can do for each other.
Yes. Do you remember we did the prayer flags for Nepal because they had the earthquake while we were in Haliburton as well?
And what are those? Tell us a little bit about those flags. How do they work?
Those flags are you make a string of flags and they're triangular. And we cut them out of fabric and we put messages into that, and then we attached it to the string, and then we suspended it. If I remember correctly, we suspended that inside the classroom, not outside.
Yeah. Now, teachers working with elementary students do these sorts of things in the classroom all the time.
Yes.
Then you get into high school, and there's less and less stuff like that on the walls because the kids are growing up, quote unquote. And by the time you get into universities, there's no doodly-woodly things on the walls. It's a lecture hall that's quite barren with a guy or a woman standing at the front, and there's a whiteboard because you're not allowed to use chalk anymore. And it's
sterile.
Yes, it gets more sterile as we get older. And then in an office, it's supposed to be all professional. So the boardroom has only professional things, and there's nothing that brings you a grounding. This is how you're supposed to act. This is what you're supposed to do, and do what is expected of you in that environment.
Sad.
Kind of sad. I like our color therapist who comes on here quite often, Angela Dacey. She always talks about bringing color and the energy of color into your life. I find it very rewarding sometimes to sit in one of those office meetings and think to myself, I'm wearing purple underwear and nobody knows but me. And you know what? That kind of makes me happy because it can be my wild side still being acknowledged.
Yes.
Not for the rest of the world to see. I'll follow the rules in that environment when I have to.
Right.
But I am who I am inside, no matter what I have to conform to on the outside.
Very healthy.
It is a healthy way, I think.
Yes.
I didn't always do that.
No, Haliburton did that, I think, for you.
I think Haliburton did it for a lot of us. I think it really gave us, again, the permission to be who we are. And yes, I do believe that there's checks and balances, isn't there? We need to play. Obviously. But you're not going to play in a board meeting that's going to get you the largest contract of your life. That's not the time or the place. And I think that's one of the things that we do teach children along the way is that, even if it's something as simple as when kids go to church on Sunday morning, part of the biggest training of church is that when you're in a place like that, this is how you dress, this is how you act, this is the behavior I expect from you in this situation.
It's a sense of discipline.
And when you get home, sure, get into your bathing suit and go outside and play in the dirt. Bye, have fun,
Yes.
But there are times and places in life where you have to, I guess, conform. But you can conform in your own way as well.
Yes.
You can have your poem stuck in your purse.
Yes.
Is that what you do with it?
I do, and it's a little bit mangled, as you can see, because obviously it's been in my purse for a while and well-loved and cherished.
So when a person signs up for an expressive arts course, if they do a workshop for a day, they can expect to have with them at the end of that day a whole new set of tools for their toolbox. All great things to add to that toolbox that helps us to be a more authentic self.
Yes.
Great. I know that you have to rush off, so we're going to let you go. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Judy, and do drop by again.
Well, thank you, Brenda. It was a great experience, and I love talking about the expressive arts with you.
Yeah, so we'll do it again for sure.
All right.
Jason, we're going to go to our top of the hour break, and when we get back, we'll continue our topic of expressive arts. Stay tuned. It's going to be a great morning here on Freshwaves.
Hi folks, Kim Mitchell here. You know, however you choose to get around, your ATV, your snowmobile, your boat, car, if you have a motorcycle, all these things take 100% of your attention and skill to operate safely. Alcohol impairs that, and bad things can happen. So, be smart, okay? You know what I'm going to say next.
This message brought to you from the Safe and Sober Awareness Committee.
Hey, I'm whistling. Would you like to whistle too? Whistle FM is looking for a few good volunteers. Come and join our team and learn a new skill. We're looking for producers, show hosts, and even people to help out around the station. Learn something new and meet new people. Email us at admin@whistleradio.com or drop by the station behind Stillville Fine Furniture. We hope to see you soon.
Hey everyone, this is Lil J. Join me every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern for the Block Party. A 2-hour journey of the best in the Canadian underground dance music scene, featuring tracks and DJ mixes from Canada's emerging artists, from the disco hits of the 70s to the latest dance floor fillers. No lineups or cover charges, it's your weekly free access to the beats that are packing dance floors in Canada and around the world. The Block Party, Saturday nights at 11 p.m. Eastern, right here on 102.9 Whistle FM.